Our story begins with an arranged marriage, a deal sealed by the MC's father to wed him to the powerful Archduke Valdrova. His father makes it chillingly clear that he knows exactly what this decision implies. It's a cruel choice. Refuse the marriage and be cast out, or accept and be utterly ruined. But all he ever wanted was to be accepted by the very family now using him as a pawn. Instead, he faced constant mockery from the servants, who called him sickly and pathetic for training despite his lack of talent. Through it all, he would look to his father, desperate for any sign of pride or recognition. And yet, instead of recognition, his own brother arrives only to mock Firda, asking if he has lost his mind for even trying. Defeated and humiliated, Firda is left on the ground, told he never even had the right to dream of being a knight. Watching from a window above, his father simply turns his back and walks away, showing no emotion at all. And in that moment, Firda finally understands that everyone had turned their backs on him long ago. So, with nothing left to lose, the young man informs his father that he is leaving the family for good. His father coldly agrees, and just like that, Firda is cast out, left alone outside the mansion gates. A final cruel warning follows. He is no longer a part of the Roznova family. This final rejection ignites an uncontrollable rage, his eyes gleaming with a terrifying new thirst for payback. Fueled by this intense emotion, a mysterious red magic circle suddenly erupts around him. Vowing to make his father regret everything, Firda awakens his latent magical powers at just 18 years old. However, his new path is met with old familiarities, as other apprentices mock him for being far too old to become a mage. But ignoring their jokes, Firda unleashes an absurd amount of mana that instantly terrifies the other boys. The same red circle flares to life as he reveals the source of his power, pure, unadulterated hatred and a desire for revenge. And this dark energy immediately erupts into a massive, devastating explosion. Years later, having forged his hatred into six-circle magic, he finally returns to the Roznova mansion. First, he deals with the servants who once humiliated him, forcing them to destroy themselves. Next on his list are his two older brothers, whom Firda masterfully turns against each other. And at last, he comes face to face with his own father, the man he despises above all others. While his father begs for a quick death, Firda forces him to witness the complete ruin he brought upon their family. With one final act, everything and everyone connected to the Roznova name vanishes from the world. Yet, even after achieving his perfect revenge, his heart finds no peace. This lingering emptiness drives him to push further, eventually reaching the 8th magic circle, the absolute peak for any human. But now, as an archmage, Firda knows he is despised, and that one day, others will come seeking their own payback against him. To ensure his survival, he needs absolute power, which means reaching the 9th circle, the realm of a demigod. That's when he finds it in an ancient text, and can't help but wonder if fate is playing some kind of cruel joke. Because the final ingredient he needs is the heart of the Red Dragon, the very same Archduke Valdrova from his past. Confronting her, he finds the dragon herself musing on how ironic and playful fate can truly be. She can't believe it. The very man she was once supposed to marry now stands before her, intending to kill her. She claims a life of isolation, but Firda furiously demands to know if she truly believes she did nothing wrong. He roars that her search for a groom was the direct cause of him being cast out by his own family. Confused, the dragon asks if it's truly her fault, to which he coldly confirms that it is. Her calm, thoughtful pause throws Firda off, making him suspicious of her reaction. Still, he takes advantage of the opening she's given him, gathering his mana for the final blow. But just as he's about to act, the dragon prepares her own strike. With terrifying speed, she lunges toward Firda, her massive claw raised high. Startled, he instantly throws up a magic barrier, bracing for the impact. A devastating strike lands, and a spray of warm blood trickles down his face. But to his utter shock, he realizes the blood isn't his. It's from the dragon, who has just torn open her own chest. Horrified and completely bewildered, Firda can only watch her self-destructive act unfold. Through the pain, she asks him if his magic truly requires a dragon's heart. That's when he understands she's trying to destroy it. He desperately screams for her to stop. Without a second thought, he fires a powerful spell, not to kill, but to stop her. The attack hits its mark, causing the immense dragon to stagger backward from the force. She continues to reel, the blow sending shockwaves through her massive frame. And as she finally begins to collapse, Firda's only thought is for the state of the heart. Just then, his eyes catch the reflection of an intense, golden glow from within her chest. In a calm voice that cuts through his panic, she simply tells him to take it, leaving him utterly confused. She then reveals that she did this after realizing her very existence was the root cause of all his suffering. Because, as Valdrova confesses, she has always hated herself and the violent blood that runs through her veins. She couldn't bear to face the monster she'd become. After all, in the past, her human form had only ever brought fear and chaos wherever she went. Her mere existence was enough to terrify everyone around her. And as a single tear falls from the dragon's eye, she accepts that all this suffering was her fault. Her only hope now is that Eiichi can find happiness through her sacrifice. With that last thought, the gigantic creature fades, falling lifelessly to the ground. And yet, this long-desired victory leaves only a bitter taste in his mouth. So, he raises the glowing dragon heart, ready to finally obtain absolute power. Furta believes that absorbing it all at once is the key to surpassing the very limits of humanity. This is how he will be reborn, as a powerful and feared demigod. In a flash, a gigantic explosion of light and dust violently consumes the entire area. When the light fades, the scenery has changed completely. He is floating naked in an immense, dark void. In that instant, an overwhelming and uncontrollable wave of someone else's feelings invades his mind. Then, a strong bolt of magical electricity strikes his head in the middle of the darkness. That's when Furta realizes in shock these memories and feelings all belong to Valdrova. He is forced to witness an ancient, deep despair that makes his own seem insignificant, coupled with a gentle, crushing loneliness. Against her suffering, all the anger and hatred that fueled his journey now seem painfully small. He can only cry out in agony, wondering what he has just done. The flood of emotion suddenly triggers a memory of his own, of a time he was just a small child, drawing alone at a table. Back then, all he wanted was to draw his family united on a piece of paper and finally be accepted by them. His one true desire was never power, it was simply to have a family and live in peace. And remembering Valdrova's human form, he sadly wonders if she, too, shared that exact same simple dream. Just then he remembers the only magic a ninth circle mage can cast is the wish spell. So, even though he thinks it's all in vain, Furta gathers his remaining will to cast the ultimate magic inside the glowing circle. The world reshapes, and suddenly, before him stands his father, Arambolt Rosnova, scolding him for being distracted. The man's voice is stern, saying he's certain Furta knows exactly what this decision means. His father warns that if he refuses the engagement to the Archduke, the Rosnova family will take action. Taking a step back, Furta is completely shocked to realize he actually traveled back in time. But this time, instead of cowering, he interrupts his father, firmly stating that he understands everything. Furta then swears he will not run away again and formally accepts the engagement to Archduke Valdrova. News travels fast, and the second son, Hukin Rosnova, is floored to hear his brother accepted the engagement. Hukin even has to ask the servant if he heard correctly, since his brother isn't the type to willingly walk toward his own ruin. The butler can only explain that Furta is due to leave soon, but has dismissed all the servants and locked himself in his room. At this, Hukin smiles wickedly, deciding to go see his younger brother's desperate face for himself. Without warning, he kicks the door open, angrily shouting and demanding to know why he hasn't left yet. But what he sees inside stops him cold, a look of absolute astonishment on his face. Instead of a boy crying in fear, he finds the youngest calmly getting dressed. And with icy composure, Furta simply questions his brother's lack of manners for invading the room without knocking. Noticing Hukin's surprise, Furta explains he dismissed the servants to get used to not having their help. After all, he continues calmly, he knows accepting the engagement basically means being expelled from the family. Hukin just laughs nervously, saying Furta is marching to his own ruin, and sneers about how the groom position is always vacant. With an extremely cold and determined expression, Furta simply responds that he is perfectly aware of everything. To prove his point, Hukin brings up the perfect prince, a man so intelligent and beautiful he refused the throne just for the engagement. However, just one day after arriving in the dragon's territory, that same prince reappeared in a wretched state, his eyes completely paralyzed. He had been violently beaten to the very brink of destruction. Pointing a finger, Hukin asks if Furta truly thinks he will survive what that prince couldn't. With a shrug, he says he won't stop a fool from walking straight into the dragon's jaws. But he adds a threat: if Furta tries to run away, he'll personally take his head before Valdrova even gets the chance. To that, Furta throws back that everyone already knows about the looks Hukin keeps giving their oldest brother's wife. As his brother lunges at him in a blind rage, Furta mockingly warns him to hold back the urge to strike. Then, stating that the journey will be long, Furta calmly says goodbye and heads for the carriage. Outside, the servant says through tears that it was an absolute honor to serve the young master. But Furta knows this is a lie. If it were a true honor, the servant wouldn't have been poisoning his food all this time. He recalls his childhood, when he thought he was just naturally frail, never realizing even his own servants were against him. So he cynically comments that it must not have been easy putting up with him for all these years, leaving the butler suddenly tense. With a final request to take care of his old family, Furta gets into the carriage, beginning the long journey back to the dragon's territory. In his past life, the madness that took over his body was a thrilling, euphoric rush. But now, having returned from death, Furta has no desire to relive that destructive and empty existence. His journey for atonement brings him to a wooden sign marking the beginning of the dupe's territory, where entry is strictly forbidden. So instead of trespassing, Furta steps down from the carriage and calmly sits on his suitcase to wait. With a final shouted wish for his safety, the coachman speeds away, leaving him utterly alone. Still, he isn't completely defenseless. He figures simple fourth circle spells will be enough to handle any wild beast that might appear. Just then, his attention is drawn to the mysterious silhouette of a girl emerging from the forest. The young woman approaches, introducing herself as Ruri, a loyal servant to Valdrova. With a simple gesture, she indicates that she will be the one to guide him to the castle. As they walk, Furta can't help but find the Duchess's terrible reputation unfair, since she built the only defense against the dangerous border. And right on cue, as wolves begin to surround them, he recalls the slanderous rumors that she was raising an army of beasts. Noticing his flicker of concern, Ruri simply tells him not to worry. She then casts a light protective magic, and instantly the beasts become docile, guaranteeing they won't attack as long as he is with her. When he asks how much further, her 2-hour estimate makes him wonder, how did she arrive so quickly in the first place? That's when Furta realizes that just as he suspected, she is no ordinary maid. In fact, Ruri is a high-level dragon spawn with innate strength and magic, who merely conceals her horns and tail. Armed with this knowledge from his past life, Furta plants his wooden staff firmly into the ground. He claims he can handle the journey, but Ruri bluntly states that she just doesn't want to carry him. When he suggests a rest, she insists they keep walking, because her master is waiting. After a long and punishing walk, Ruri finally knocks on the enormous castle door. The moment she does, Furta is astonished by the absurd pressure and the immense presence of the dragon emanating from within. Ruri tells him to wait here for a message, but he counters, suggesting they speak face to face. At this, she glares furiously, questioning if someone of his lowly standing truly has the right to see the Duke in person. Composing herself, the maid congratulates him on behalf of her master for making it this far. However, she then delivers the blow. The Duke has no interest in a forced engagement. In his past life, he thinks, he would have accepted this rejection and left immediately. But this time, he asks if she will deliver his response to her master, and she reluctantly accepts. As a final dismissal, she places a sack on the ground, explaining it's a parting gift of wealth from the Duke for his courage. Furta barely glances at the fortune before stating he has no interest in power or wealth. He declares with unwavering determination that his only interest is fulfilling the engagement to Duke Valdrova. Sensing a deception, Furta notes the response was far too short to have come from the Duke, forcing Ruri to confess the words were her own. That's when her facade shatters, horns sprouting from her head and nails sharpening into claws as she makes a direct threat. Unleashing a monstrous green magical aura, Ruri reveals her immense reptilian tail. With a surge of power, she throws him to the ground, ranting that mortals like him are just garbage consumed by ambition. And as he hits the dirt, Furta realizes it was this very same arrogance that led to the third prince's downfall. Ruri confirms it with a sneer, saying the prince only wanted to exploit the marriage to subjugate the dragon. Then she turns that threat on him, asking if Furta crossly wishes to suffer the same tragic fate. And yet, despite the immense danger, Furta offers a slight, confident smile. He guarantees he wasn't forced to come and, more importantly, he isn't seeking any personal gain. Because he remembers how in his past life, the dragon gave her own heart to save a selfish, worthless man like him. So this time, Furta declares, he will be the one to stand by her side as he came to be her groom. And if they're to be married, he says, the Duchess should speak to him directly, not through a mere maid. At his complete and utter insolence, the servant's fist trembles with rage. She can't take it anymore and lunges with her claws ready, furiously yelling for him to stop his nonsense. But suddenly, Ruri freezes mid-attack, her claws halting just inches from his face. She reluctantly steps away, asking to be excused for a moment, to which Furta calmly agrees. Moments later, inside the castle, Ruri faithfully relays every one of Furta's bold words to her master. She kneels before the immense silhouette of the dragon, the one who holds absolute power in this territory. That silhouette then shifts, revealing the beautiful Grand Duchess Valdrova in her human form, who asks in surprise if he truly said all that. Intrigued by his sheer audacity, the red-haired Duchess admits she wants to find out what kind of person he really is. Ruri immediately protests, reporting that he's incredibly weak and looked exhausted just from the walk here. She disdainfully calls him awful and suggests throwing him out, which earns a stern look from her master. Ruri awkwardly apologizes and adds that he's handsome, but the Duchess clarifies that wasn't her question. Finally, with a sigh of defeat, the maid admits that Ferda is not an ordinary human. She explains that as a dragon spawn, it's easy for her to terrify any mere mortal, yet her full power had absolutely no effect on him. But according to the servant's report, Ferda showed no sign of fear even when she unleashed her terrifying aura. This leads her to believe he might just be capable of looking directly into the Duchess's eyes. Hearing this, the Duchess simply chuckles, commenting that she finds his attitude very good. In fact, she's pleased that there's finally a human capable of holding her direct gaze. With her orders accepted in silence, Ruri returns outside to Ferda. She informs him that her lady has decided to move forward with the engagement. Stepping into the luxurious room, however, Ferda is surprised that it's much cleaner than he imagined. Curious, he asks who cleans the room, to which Ruri proudly declares she's the only other person in the castle besides the dragon. Like a watchdog, he thinks, before asking when the engagement ceremony will be held. Ruri explains the simple ceremony will take place in 1 month, right here inside the dragon's lair itself. 1 month, the deadline hangs in the air as the young man grows thoughtful. But Ruri warns him that this is his chance to prove his true worth, since nothing will be handed to him. Pointing her finger, she demands that in these 30 days he obtain a status worthy of being the Duchess's partner. He asks if this is the Duchess's wish, but Ruri confesses it was her own personal decision. Her master, she explains, is naive and forgiving, but she refuses to accept just anyone living in the castle. Hearing this, Ferda thinks with satisfaction that his future bride has excellent, loyal allies. But at the same time, a bitter question arises: why weren't those allies there to protect her in his past life? He accepts the challenge anyway, ironically asking if he needs to become emperor, but she replies that it's enough not to be looked down upon. With a confident smile, he realizes this means he must show potential surpassing even an emperor. His calm and relaxed reaction to her challenge only irritates Ruri, who glares at him. Yet Ferda simply tells her not to worry, guaranteeing he will prove his true capabilities in just 1 month. Later, however, Ferda confronts the reality that he must prove his potential despite currently having no magical abilities. He was the only mage to ever reach the 9th circle, so he just needs to recapture that feeling. For any mage, the first circle is the most important step, as it defines all their mana circuits. There's the blue circle, created through calm meditation, the path chosen by most mages. And then there's the red circle, born from hatred and turbulent emotions, a dangerous path that nearly drove him mad in the past. This time, Ferda decides on a different route, one that will ensure he won't falter on his new journey. So, he sits on the floor in a lotus position to begin meditating. He concentrates deeply, manifesting a small, bluish magical energy between his hands. But with a tired sigh, he watches the energy dissipate as he fails once again. Time ticks on, and with only 3 weeks left, Ruri interrupts him, asking if he's actually preparing. While eating, Ferda calmly says things will work out if he keeps trying, which leaves her silently irritated. Suddenly, a powerful tremor shakes the entire room, taking Ferda completely by surprise. He asks what that vibration was, and Ruri explains that her master is out hunting monsters. She specifies that the Duchess is personally eliminating creatures coming from the east. At that, Ferda stands up resolutely, informing the maid he wishes to see the battle with his own eyes. Ruri, however, strongly advises against the idea, making him question why he can't go. She explains with grave seriousness that an ordinary human's mind could never withstand the sight of such combat. She even mocks him, saying it's better not to watch if he doesn't want to embarrass himself before the ceremony. And yet Ferda insists, stating that seeing the combat is the duty of the one who will be her companion. Faced with his stubbornness, Ruri spreads her dragon wings and flies him swiftly through the sky. Moments later, they land on a grassy cliff as Ruri announces their arrival. But Ferda immediately drops to his knees, sick from the trip's absurd speed, which was almost like teleportation. Ruri harshly orders him to stand up and look ahead once and for all. From the cliff top, they see a thick, dark purple mist covering the entire region below. As Ferda focuses his vision on the abyss, his eyes widen in complete shock. Down below, 2 enormous serpents lunge at the dragon, roaring terrifyingly. But Valdrova's powerful claws tear through one of the monster's scales without any difficulty. She follows up by fiercely biting the creature's neck as flames begin to glow in her mouth. The fiery energy builds rapidly in her throat, illuminating the entire battlefield. Then, she unleashes a devastating breath of fire that incinerates everything in its path. The resulting heatwave buffets the cliff top, yet Ruri remains perfectly calm and unfazed. With the enemy gone, the dragon lets out an extremely deafening and intimidating roar. The crushing pressure from that roar causes Ferda to break out in a cold sweat, his body trembling. He collapses to his knees, completely awestruck by the absurd amount of power his future bride possesses. The dragon's roar is more than just a sound. It's an overwhelming aura that shatters the mind of any human who hears it up close. And Ferda is feeling its full effect, trembling as he clutches his chest while Ruri coldly asks if he finally understands the situation. She then points toward the immense beast, revealing Fis as the true form of his future companion. Just as she expected, he's trembling like a leaf, confirming every single one of her earlier warnings. This is an unyielding force of nature, an existence driven by a fierce intent to destroy everything in its path. But instead of cowering, Ferda raises his head with a smile, murmuring that it's all truly magnificent, much to the servant's surprise. Ruri is absolutely stunned. That isn't dread in his eyes, it's pure, unadulterated admiration. Horrified, she takes a step back, wondering if this human is some kind of crazy glutton for punishment. And yet, despite his bold expression, his entire body is completely worn out from the direct effects of that roar. He can't help but wonder why he went to see such dangerous combat, though all the impressive scenes he witnessed flashed through his mind. Just then, a flash of clarity hits Ferda, his eyes widening with a powerful revelation. Yes, the sight was terrifying, but deep down, he realizes he wants to keep watching his future bride even up close. He reflects on her duty on the eastern border, hiding her true form to crush one terrible monster after another. For Ferda, this selfless determination is like the journey of a noble knight who voluntarily chose a path of suffering. Opening his arms wide, he marvels at how truly magnificent her spirit is. It's in that moment that a strong red energy concentrates in his hands, and with a start, he recognizes the red circle. He desperately tries to contain the surge, knowing he cannot repeat the mistakes of his past and must reject his power. But as he looks closer at the red mana's flow, he's intrigued by something he sees within it. The image of that imposing warrior in red armor, his bride, resurfaces with full force in his mind. He notices that the more he remembers her battle, the more his circuits clear with a feeling that isn't hatred or revenge. So, sitting in meditation, he tries to identify this mysterious new emotion before it can dissipate. Concentrating entirely on this feeling, he compresses and rapidly spins the magical energy between his hands. As the red mana glows intensely, shaping itself around his body, he channels every ounce of his willpower. His goal, to manifest a single, powerful magic circle. He succeeds, and as the circle forms, he smiles, noticing the energy is completely different this time. With a firm gaze, he vows that the mistakes of the past will never happen again in this new life. The very next day, Ruri enters his room only for her jaw to drop. Did he really activate his circuits in a single night? He just brags that he's no ordinary person, then asks what she thinks of his progress so far. Not wasting any time, Ferda asks for a place to train, and they soon head to a field lined with practice targets. Ruri proudly announces that she prepared the entire training area herself, just as he requested. Still, she finds it strange he asks for such simple targets, so he explains his goal is to train efficient mana control. Ferda jokes that her race would find this kind of training barbaric, but Ruri proudly reminds him that she's a dragon spawn too. He knows that those with natural power will never understand human effort, so he simply invites her to watch. After all, the circle he chose to awaken this time is a red circle, which changes the dynamics entirely. He must stir his emotions and control them at the same time, because overcoming this contradiction is what will unleash his true power. In his past life, it took him a full year just to extract mana from hatred, and another year to condense it into a sphere. But now, with all his accumulated experience, he creates that exact same sphere in only 2 minutes. Ruri can only watch in shock, wondering how he so perfectly controlled his mana to create a stable sphere on his very first attempt. Then, pointing firmly toward the targets, Ferda commands the magic spheres to fire. The projectiles shoot forward at high speed, leaving a glowing trail of destructive energy in their wake. With a deafening explosion, the mana blast hits the target dead center, completely obliterating it. Satisfied, he looks down at his hands and smiles, commenting that he hasn't lost his touch for magic. Ruri, however, just stares in silence, seriously analyzing the flawless demonstration of strength she just witnessed. Later, in a hidden cave, Ruri meets with the Grand Duchess Valdrova, concluding her report on Ferda's awakening. The Grand Duchess admits she isn't sure how impressive that truly is, so she asks for Ruri's own evaluation of the young man. Ruri's report is simple: he was perfect, making no mistakes, which makes him dangerous and sparks her lady's curiosity. She insists it's impossible for a human to be so perfect without hiding something, guessing he might just be a weirdo who likes pain. Valdrova finds it amusing that Ruri is finally recognizing a human's skills, and the servant reluctantly admits he is surprising. But the Duchess tells her not to worry, stating she will try to trust the pure intentions he displayed. This does little to calm Ruri, who bitterly remembers how other humans have deeply hurt her master in the past, and so she swears to protect her lady's heart from any new disappointments, vowing to discover this suitor's real intentions. Sometime later, a formal announcement rings out as Ferda appears, impeccably dressed in a noble red outfit. Inside the hall, lords are complaining about the meeting, but their chatter dies down as their attention turns to the imminent arrival of the new groom. One lord can't believe someone actually accepted the insane proposal and loudly asks who the fool could possibly be. The other nobles begin to whisper, dismissing him as just a weak young man who can't even wield a sword. On top of that, the influential Count Overa guarantees the groom will surely end up torn apart by the Duchess herself. And yet, with an elegant posture and an unnervingly calm gaze, Ferda steps into the hall, followed closely by Ruri. Just before the confrontation, the young man was in the library, questioning if he truly needed to meet with the feudal lords at all. But his aide, Ruri, insisted it was necessary, asking if he even knew why her master held the imposing title of Grand Duchess. She reminded him that it was Valdrova herself who had personally slain the terrible black dragon Godwin in the past. For this great feat she was granted these lands, but since her focus is now hunting monsters, her groom must govern the region in her place. That's when he understood this was a test of his leadership, a challenge he immediately accepted. Which brings us to the meeting, where the young man formally introduces himself as the Grand Duchess's future companion and takes the floor. In response, an old count offers a subtle smile, diplomatically stating that everyone present serves faithfully under the Duchess's light. And while it is only fair to show respect to her future groom, he makes it clear that certain conditions must first be discussed. The elderly man then plays his hand, reminding them all that their loyalty was sworn to the Empire long before this young man was even born. After listening calmly, Ferda harshly asks if that is their definitive answer on how they wish to be treated. He raises a cold gaze, demanding they answer his question directly. Ferda then continues, assuring them that after the marriage he will leave the governance of each territory to their respective lords. But his words clearly strike a nerve, as a lord slams the table, roaring if he's implying they steal from their own people. With dripping irony, Ferda raises a hand in a cynical apology, claiming it was merely a slip of the tongue. The irritated lord taunts back, sneering that now he understands why Ferda's own family banished him. Demanding respect as a superior fourth circle mage, the man boasts of his power, yet Ferda just murmurs that fourth circle is reasonable enough. Facing this open aggression, Ferda calmly extends a hand, not to fight, but with an interesting proposal for his opponent. He suggests that to test the skills of a mere first circle mage like himself, they should settle things with a duel. And so, the scene shifts to a dueling arena, where nobles are already certain the outcome is decided before it even begins. While Ruri observes in silence, the other nobles wonder aloud if the mage, Thessalos, will show any mercy to young Ferda. But Ferda, hands casually in his pockets, breaks the tension by simply asking which spell his opponent intends to use. Offended by such a rude question, Thessalos mocks him, offering one last chance to back out of the fight. He then grandly announces he will use the powerful fourth circle magic explosion, to finish him off. Completely unfazed, Ferda says he will also reveal his technique, coldly stating that the only spell he knows is the mana shot. His opponent bursts out laughing at the mention of such a basic spell, but Ferda responds with chilling confidence that he has no intention of losing. With that, a massive glowing transmutation circle erupts beneath Thessalos' feet, ready to unleash his fatal attack. Yet Ferda sees more than just power. He sees his rival unstably stirring his emotions to inflate it, recognizing him as another wielder of the red circle. And without wasting another moment, 3 red projectiles erupt from Ferda's hand at blinding speed. As they streak across the arena, Thessalos' eyes widen in pure shock at their impossible velocity. That shock turns to despair as he watches his powerful magic get obliterated before it can even fully form. It's in that moment he realizes the terrible truth. The blasts were never aimed at him. Instead, Ferda had targeted the precise weak points of the transmutation circle itself, shattering it completely. Thrown back by the magical shockwave, he can't believe a mere first circle mage could be capable of such a thing. Panic sets in as he recognizes the technique of breaking an active circle, a high-level skill that not even he can perform. His magic flow violently interrupted, he collapses to his knees, utterly exhausted and shaking with no strength left. Drenched in a cold sweat, all Thessalos can do is murmur to himself in disbelief that he has just lost. But instead of insults, he movingly confesses that all he ever wanted was to become a stronger warrior. He then bows his head to the ground in total defeat, vowing he would do anything to obtain that true power. While the nobles whisper in shock, Ruri quietly threatens to tear out the eyes of anyone who doubts Ferda's clean victory. The mention of the capital piques Ferda's interest, so he asks the mage's name, and the man introduces himself as Thessalos Walcher. At the sound of that name, a memory flashes in Ferda's mind, and he murmurs that he finally remembers. Fixing him with an intense gaze, Ferda drops a bombshell, revealing that in another life, Thessalos was his great benefactor. Before the confused lord can even process this revelation, Ferda steps forward and gently touches his forehead. A thunderous magical impact erupts at point-blank range, hurling Thessalos backward with overwhelming force. Every noble watching freezes in abject terror, their mouths agape at the shocking, brutal scene. Thessalos falls to the arena floor, lifeless and bleeding, while Ferda observes his work with absolute coldness. In the dead silence that follows, Ferda turns and walks away from the lord's body without a hint of remorse. Finally, that silence breaks as the feudal lords begin to tremble, terrified to realize he just took a noble's life. Hearing their whispers, Ferda turns back to the frightened crowd and ironically asks why they're all so tense. He states plainly that the man deserved it, and leaving him alive would only bring suffering to the Lucas, the people. With an enigmatic smile, he adds that his bride wishes from the bottom of her heart for all humans to live happily. He then explains that Thessalos' crime was one that would occur in the distant future, admitting he has no proof to show them now. They think he's a madman for killing over a future crime, but Ferda simply warns them he doesn't care about the rest of them. Later, safely inside his carriage, that cold facade shatters as Ferda hunches over, a groan of pure suffering escaping his lips. His mind is spinning, he complains, an extreme wave of sickness washing over him. And then comes the realization, his mana was completely depleted, all of it spent on that single, impossibly precise mana shot. And to make matters worse, the bumpy ride toward their destination is causing him severe nausea. When the young man asks if she is talking about Thessalos, the servant confirms it, adding that despite appearances, he was once very loyal to her master. But Ferda knows something she doesn't. At this very moment, Thessalos is committing a grave crime within these lands. So when the butler informs them their master is out, Ferda coldly replies that the lord is, in fact, dead. Before the confused butler can process this, Ruri shoves a heavy sack directly into his arms, telling him to hold on to it. Then, she casually orders him to hang its contents on the castle's main gates for all to see. As the butler opens the sack, his confusion turns to absolute panic, for inside is the severed head of his late master. Ignoring the man's desperate cries, Ferda and Ruri storm past him into Thessalos' luxurious room, searching for secret clues. Ruri warns him that he'd better find proof of corruption, but Ferda just reminds her she already helped by securing the head. She threatens to take it back and cancel the engagement, just as the young man announces he's found a secret passage under the bed. But he's taking too long to open it, prompting Ruri to authoritatively tell him to step aside immediately. She plants her feet firmly, concentrating all of her immense physical strength into a single, clenched fist. With one punch, a huge hole opens in the ground, and Ruri casually shakes off the dust, declaring the passage open. As they descend, however, both are forced to cover their noses against the unbearable stench of blood and rot invading the air. Down below, they discover a secret laboratory, packed with surgical tools and the mangled, combined corpses of humans and monsters. To his horror, Ferda spots a chained-up soldier from this very territory, realizing the lord was stitching monster organs onto his own men. At this sight, Ruri is overcome with a burning rage. The psychopath was practically begging for them to kill him. She angrily concludes that humans can't be trusted, though even she admits this vile betrayal fully justifies the nobleman's execution. Without answering, the young man's attention fixes on a stack of papers as he triumphantly whispers that he's finally found it. These documents reveal Thessalos' secret masterpiece, the infinite mana cultivation method. In his notes, Thessalos explains that monsters produce mana infinitely and constantly from within their own bodies. He theorized that if this biological capacity could be artificially replicated, it would become possible to extract that mana without end. Such a technique would completely shatter all known limits imposed by traditional magic circles. Ferda remembers how the necromancer had celebrated becoming an archmage, while the Ferda of the past could only confront him in silence. In that past life, he had intended to use this very technique to fuel his own revenge. And now, in this life, the secret mana cultivation technique has fallen right into his hands, exactly as it did before. He knows studying this forbidden method would let him reach the 8th circle far faster, and yet he hesitates. Then, to Ruri's utter shock, he places the documents in her hands and coldly orders her to destroy everything in the laboratory. She demands to know if he's serious, unable to fathom why any mage would willingly cast aside such powerful knowledge. But Ferda would rather destroy the technique at its roots than be seduced by its power and bring sadness to the Grand Duchess. He looks her dead in the eye, and asks firmly if she will burn all of these forbidden documents for him. After staring at him for a long moment, Ruri decisively responds that his request will not be difficult to fulfill. In an instant, blue dragonfire furiously spreads throughout the lab, incinerating all the research and every last mutilated body. Watching the flames, Furta knows that if he had accepted that dark magic, he would have been consumed by uncontrollable feelings all over again. He thinks of his bitter former self who survived only on hatred, and feels the weight lift from the relieved man he is now. As Ruri stares at this unpredictable young man, her rigid opinion of him finally begins to change. With a sigh, she says they should leave the basement now and finally head back to the castle. After all, she warns, it would be terribly rude to smell blood and rot before their grand engagement ceremony, a thought that leaves the young man buzzing with excitement.